The first question is, this one came from Michael. How do you identify what was holding your team or pipeline back? So what do you identify was holding your team, or what was like the bottleneck of stuff holding your team back or your people back, John?
Yeah, so I took over the team that I was in. So I stepped up to be the manager purely because I was a good individual contributor and I had the people skills that I wasn't just a lone wolf. So I became an accidental manager. If you stop looking at your pipeline like a spreadsheet and you start treating it as if it's sort of about behaviors and decision makers, um, then that's where you can sort of identify some of the problems. Then I had to sort of just dive in, really, look at, observe what my team were doing. Are there any pattern recognitions that I could identify with what was going right and what was going wrong? And then coach them, really. Y- Yeah. You have to focus on the people. People don't perform badly normally because they're lazy. Salespeople are quite ambitious. So you have to dive into what it is that's going on in their world. So observe, recognize the good and the bad of the good, less of the bad, and actually give coaching. A lot of leaders think they coach. A pipeline meeting isn't coaching. Um, coach them on problems, coach them on life, just speak to them like humans. So that's pretty much what I did in my first 6 months as head of business development.
Love that. Thank you for answering. And like kind of a follow up to that, as you said, like treat people like people rather than a spreadsheet and looking at your pipeline. And as a former manager, I understood everybody had their different makeups and what they're motivated with. When it's something I've noticed is imagine if George was my rep and like he was up top performer, everything's cool, and then I saw a dip. Initially, I'd ask like, what's wrong with him, or and again, George, not saying there's anything wrong with you, but, these questions bubble in my head as a manager, like, what's up? Is something going on at work? And then I think it's all work related. But sometimes it's nothing to do with work. It's actually stuff outside of work that's affecting them in work. How did you handle those sort of things or like tease out, is this a work thing or is this a personal thing? Like you said, dealing with people.
Yeah. Although I was managing the team that I was in, that didn't mean I had like best mate status with all of them. So you have to build that trust with your team that they can trust you with those things that are from outside of work. And there is someone that I was really close to on my team. And my team, it grew and shrunk in size over my 3 years. So I won't say whether or not they are still there or not, so I can keep it anonymous.
Yeah.
There was a distinct sort of dip in their performance that I couldn't necessarily put my finger on. And it turned out that their relationship was failing. They ended up splitting up with their fiance and their dad was really ill in hospital. So it was 100% home-based stuff. Very, very proud person. They didn't want, work to be affected by their personal life. They didn't feel like it was my responsibility to listen to that stuff or, if I had things going on in my life, they didn't want to be a burden, but they're not a burden. It's my job, right? It's my job to look after them as people. I always want to make sure that they are better professionally and personally for every year that I manage them. So build the trust that they can open up. If they do open up, make sure that that's never weaponized, obviously. And there's always probably more to it. Same with discovery call questions, right? We ask someone a question on discovery call, we'll get a surface level answer. You have to probe further and obviously probe at the appropriate rate. You don't jump in and ask a brand new discovery call person, how much did you make last year? You earn the right to ask those questions. The same with leadership, just applying those things. But yeah, it's you just have to put people first. It's that simple.
Can we have a round of applause for Mr. Mason on the first question answered by the coach? Cool. And that also does remind me of a time as a former manager. I've had three instances. One where one of my SDRs' life wasn't cool. They found out they were going to be a mother, and that was a first time shock for them. And their head was like all over the gaff. I had somebody else on a personal level where they wanted to come out to their parents, but they didn't know how to have that conversation, and they wanted to confide with me and say, "This is what actually happened in my life, and I don't know how to do it." And it's screwing with my head. So I've had those moments as well. But I think to your point, you have to earn the right of trust by giving trust to those people and those relationships. And I also realize as a manager, I'm not your mate and I shouldn't act like your mate. But if I can open up a safe space for you to come and have a chat with me, that's all cool. And the way that I would do that, John and crew, is I'm just going to take off my manager hat for a minute. And you're now talking to Neil, and position it that way was really useful and helpful for me. But thank you, John.